Where am I playing small? Where am I holding back? Where am I playing so that I'm assured of the outcome versus where can I just go with reckless abandon and just see what I can do and just see how far. And if you remove the top of the envelope and say there is no real limit that I'm going to put on myself, I'm going to find my limit myself and not put a box on it to begin with. That is to me where I would find true growth.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Moeller, and on this podcast, we will be interviewing guests that have made their mark in real estate, in business, and in other areas of life. Listening to podcasts myself has helped me in so many different ways and continues to do so. If you're a real estate investor or an entrepreneur or aspiring to be either, or just someone that wants to learn, you've come to the right place. An easy way to have an impact is to share this episode with friends or family, provide a review, or just spread the word. We greatly appreciate it, and now let's get to the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. Very excited for this week's guest, Mr. Eric Sardina. Eric, how are you doing today?
My man, Phil, I'm doing great, brother. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited for this. But the first order of business for those that are not watching on video is we just had a 2-minute segment on my bald brother here, Eric Sardina, and how good we look we were debating 2 guards and 1 guards and just straight metal and all kinds of stuff. So I was like, we needed to be recording. We can't recreate that, but we did conclude with some bald is good. So that's the main message.
I don't know about the ball. I don't know if I'm comfortable with the ball world, man. I got a lot going on up here. There's I don't know. I can almost grab it with my fingers. I really can't grab it, but I haven't adopted the ball word because it's more like it's just a short haircut. Really, really.
Don't fight it. Don't fight it.
It's really short. It's really short. I love going to the steel though. Once I took that plastic guard off, it was very freeing, but then it has the little lever on the cutter, which can make the teeth get a little longer. So I'm still on the longer steel teeth, but I just like having that cold steel against the skin. It's very freeing.
Okay.
And there's something to be said. I get that fluff off. I tell my wife, I got to cut my hair. She's like, oh yeah, you're really in need of a cut. It's getting crazy. I'm like, yeah, it's all fluffy and weird. And you cut it and it just feels so good. Man, I love it short.
I'll just end with it. We're way off track and I did that to us, but there's some people out there, you know who you are. You're fighting.
Don't fight
it. Just take it off, man.
Clean it up.
We talk about freedom on the podcast a lot, just take it off. It's
gotta be
freeing. So, all right, I haven't even introduced you yet, Eric. So first, former C-suite executive at a company, a big move back in 2021 to shift from that, leverage your knowledge of that, plus your mindset to focus on strategic coaching. You're an international business coach and speaker. You own Sardina Strategic Partners, and I was on your podcast a couple years ago. Just a great guy all around, a really cool story. So tell me why do you do what you do and how did you get here?
Yeah. So I was my last run, you mentioned the C-suite and that always sounds like, a C-suite, but the reality is it was a high growth, family owned business. And I was running all the marketing, advertising, and I was wearing just a ton of hats. So I was technically chief marketing officer of a entity that had locations in 11 states, doing a lot of things, was making a lot of money. And yet I really was not feeling fulfilled. I was feeling really empty and misaligned with what I thought is my purpose. And to say that, I didn't even spend the time before that to ask myself, what is my purpose? Why am I here? We talked before hitting record, I'm a cradle Catholic and sort of was the Catholic in the pews that was just there going through the motions until until 2001, I went on a men's retreat that really lit my faith on fire. And so that's 20 plus years ago. And I would say even since then, my faith has kind of meandered along this path of going through periods of being really on fire to being somewhat dead. And, not dead's probably the wrong word, but just kind of, bland. And then, back and forth. And I got into that period of my career and maybe my life. I had turned 50 years old in 2018. And I started to ask myself those questions like, am I doing what I was designed to do? Like if God knew me before I was born, if he stitched me in my mother's womb, if he knows every hair on my head, well, God doesn't do things willy-nilly. He had a plan. He had something in mind for me. Am I fulfilling that? Or am I just going through these motions of stacking up a lot of money and material wealth and wins, but feeling, why am I feeling so empty? If that's supposed to be the goal, why do I feel so empty? As you know, the more money I make, I'm not feeling any better. I feel, I still have anxiety. I still struggle with feeling like the bottom could drop out at any minute. And am I really doing what I was put on the earth to do? So I spent some time working. I hired a coach for the first time and spent some time working with that coach in doing a bit of introspection and spending a lot of time in prayer and journaling for the first time. I was written write things down and just to try to figure out, what does God call me to do? What does he want me to do while I'm here? He's given me some talents. I've got some things that I do well at, some things that I'm maybe not as good at. um, am I using them for the right intention? So the ability to be a good listener, the ability to engage with human beings, the ability to have empathy and care about people are strengths. Those are things that come natural to me. I've used them in a sales environment to engage with people and sell stuff in my career, and it's led, that's a lucrative thing. But is that what God wanted me to do? Or is there something else? So I started to look into it and really think on it. And some things got rough where I was in terms of work. It was the work environment was getting more and more difficult. And my wife has just been this, she and I have been married over 30 years. We're coming up on 32 this spring. And so she knows me super well, obviously. And she's just been a great guide to me and an encourager of, um, you know, continue to ask those questions, continue to seek, what the Lord wants for you. And when I started to feel like I need to step out of this role, I need to try something else and take a bit of a risk, but they didn't really equate it as being a risk. I just said, I need to make a change. I need to get out of this position. She was supportive of it 100%. And so that's kind of a long-winded answer to a short question, but that's ultimately then in July of 21, I left my corporate role, my W-2 role, with this idea that I was going to be a coach of men and women, but a lot of men clients, in helping them kind of twofold. One, helping them go through their own review of what's their mission, what are their values, what's important to them, what do they put on the earth to do, whether they have a faith component or not. Even if you're an agnostic or atheist and you're like, I don't really believe in God. Well, if you don't believe in God, it is clearly a statistical miracle that you are on the planet, right? If you backed up time and said every pair of people that had to get together to result in you being here, the miracle that is, there is a statistical number, and I used to have it in my mind, but I kind of discarded it because I'm like, it's really, I don't believe in the statistical miracle. I believe I was intentionally planned by God. But if
Yeah.
you did the statistics, it's like one in 1/6 million to the trillionth power or something
Yeah.
stupid,
Something.
right? Because
Yep.
you go all the way back, it goes back to, there's no end point. It just keeps going back generationally, it's like 400 generations until it all began, and then
Right.
here you are. So if that miracle has been bestowed on you, you're a miracle, I'm a miracle. Well, what are we doing with that miracle while we have it, which is really a short period of time? So I help men try to sort through, like, what are you here to do with the time that you got? And so I do a bit of that work. And then I also do work for professionals. In my career, I worked at some large consulting organizations. And so I consult with and coach men in those organizations, learn how to do, so professional services. So a lot of attorneys and a lot of accountants in how to do things that they don't naturally, aren't taught to do, right? So attorneys and accountants, as they get to be toward a partner level, they have to build a book of business. They have to give presentations. They have to typically do more business development type stuff, and I help them with that. So I coach kind of on a pure business side in that area as well. So I have a lot of clients in the U.S. and some internationally, where I help professional services folks grow, build books of business and things like that. That's what I'm coaching and consulting on now. So I'll stop there. I've
Awesome.
said enough.
So you said July 2021, and you kind of said you left the corporate role and you started focus on coaching, but and you talked about how supportive your wife was in that process. But you started thinking about that in 2018, I think, or
Yes.
around that time frame. So you talked in 3 minutes about a 3 year time period where you were really thinking this through and planning around it. What was that like? What were the fears during that time? And what ultimately led you to, okay, I'm gonna take the jump.
Yeah. What's really interesting as I went through this whole journey is, I don't know if you're familiar with the DISC profile or personality assessment, but
Hmm.
I'm a big time C, right? So I'm a conscientiousness, which means I tend to play safe. I tend to be very analytical, and I can get into the weeds, and I can get a bit of analysis paralysis, some of those types of things. I love to be right. I love to make sure I've got my well thought out in my responses, things like that. That can lead to not making the decision to actually go, right? It can be that. It can also, there are some strengths in there and there are some weaknesses in there. So in 2018, when I started on the path, it was really like I was digging, learning about myself, really asking myself some questions. And I had the ability to ask myself some questions maybe for the first time where my kids were out of the house. My son had graduated. He had just moved away to go to work. And so I'm like, wow, I'd really associated much of my purpose was to raise my children, be a good husband, be a good dad. Once my kids were off and working and not even living in the same state, I was like, huh, well, that part's, it's not really over, but it's certainly the heavy lifting of that was in my past. So if that's not it and I'm still here, well, what else? Maybe there's something else I was missing. So I started to really just ask and ask and ask without a timeline or any sort of definition around when I had to leave or if I was even going to leave. Um, and then again, as things progressed and where I was working, 2018 things were really good. 19 got a little rougher. 2021 got especially challenging. The timing was like, okay, I feel like it's time to take a risk on me and get out there and try something that I feel like is something I'll be good at, and that I will enjoy that. And I may not make as much money, but there will be so many positives. And I felt like the Lord was really leading me that way. Like there was a bit of that trust element. Like I need to trust in the Lord that He's going to provide a way, that there's going to be some things, there's going to be some dots connected and some lights are going to turn on that I can't see right now. And that was hard for me as a conscientious person that's like, man, I need to know, like, I want to see all the green lights before I go, right? I want to have the whole path planned out before I go. And there was this part that was fairly new for me. Not fairly, it was new for me to go, I'm going to trust that this is going to work out. And if I have an issue, that a way will be made. I'll find a way back.
Yeah, yeah. And two things. First of all, I think the disc profile C, which I have some elements of that. I have the D and the C, so I'm a bad combination.
Powerful.
But the C is it holds people back, right? Like it C's are so cautious personality, conscientious personality. I forget the exact word, but it means
Yeah.
you're overthinking, overanalyzing. And like when I was leaving my job, I talk about creating every issue in my head that didn't really exist. We probably talked about it when I was on your podcast, but um, I think the point is if you're a C or if you're a D or an I or an S or whatever you are, you can do this. You can take the step.
Mm,
And then the other thing is what you said is you took a risk on yourself, or other people
mm.
say you bet on yourself. How does the fact that you took that risk on yourself, how does it just how do you feel about that?
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard to do. If I look back at my whole life, and I did this during some of my work with my coach, what I found was I've always done very well at the things I've pursued, right? Whether it was sports or school. I was really good at school and because I planned to, like I wanted to do well. I wanted to get A's. I was one of those kids that was like, oh, I got a 97, right? I was mad about those 3 points. At the same time, if when I honestly reflected back, I was playing small a lot of the time, right? So instead of taking the most advanced courses I could take and seeing what I could stretch into and push myself into, I was afraid that I wouldn't stack up against that peer group. right? That I wouldn't be at the front of the class if I was in a really advanced class, that I would be somewhere in the middle or maybe even having a hard time keeping up. And so rather than stretch and lean into that, I tended to play small. Like I took all regular classes in high school, took pretty much a regular curriculum in college, didn't look to take anything weird, anything that wasn't required for my degree. Um, and and I loved getting the gold star. I loved getting, hundreds and 80, 98s and all that stuff. And so I was playing, if I look back on that, I think, man, I was playing safe. Like I didn't want to really stretch and grow and be uncomfortable, which goes back to the C thing. C's don't like to be wrong. They don't like to be uncomfortable. They don't like to be unprepared. They like to feel like they've got all the answers and they can be right. And the risk in that is that you're so enamored with the outcome that you aren't enjoying or paying attention to the journey,
Yeah.
right? And I wasn't, and I've learned and really have worked intentionally on getting more and getting better at being uncomfortable, right? And I don't really like the term. It's overused, I think, in cliche to say get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's just too knuckleheady to me. And overused, because the reality is when you're uncomfortable, you were looking for an exit, right? Like I've
Yeah.
done some really hard physical things, and when I'm in the throes of it, it's like, man, I'm ready for this to be over, and embracing the idea that part of the shaping, the learning is in the hard parts.
Yeah.
So you really don't want them to be over. You want them to suck. You want them to be
Yeah.
uncomfortable. And
And
yet the brain and the body is wired to say, give me relief.
yeah.
I want out, you know?
Yeah. Oh man, I have like four different directions to go. So you said you were playing small a lot of the time.
Mm,
What does playing big look like? And kind of connect that with the question or discussion around, what I wrote down when you talked about the outcome is that thinking about the outcome can slow us down, right? Thinking about the
mm,
outcome makes us play small, is what I heard you say. How
yeah.
do we think big, not maybe in the context of the outcome, though?
Yeah. How do we think or play big? I think it depends on it. The way you do that is you change the way you measure, right? You change the game. If the game is about the outcome, then I'm going to play the game that I can score the highest, do the best, have the most assured chance of winning, right? It's, I equate this to I didn't do this in sports as much. I did it some where I played a lot of tennis growing up, played a lot of competitive tennis, and as there were certain tournaments you could play in the open division, which was just everybody, all comers, right? Collegiate players, everything, or you could play in a couple divisions. I could have played a couple divisions down or played according to my age. And the tendency was, well, I want to play according to my age or play according to a lower division because I'm going to be able to compete better there. If I play open, I could get smoked, and I don't really like getting smoked, right? So I think I might play down a little bit, and as opposed to, I really want to see what the best guys have to show, so that I can
Yep.
see where I stack up against that, and I can see
Yep.
where the weaknesses are in my game, and look to really improve. That's playing a different game. That game is like, I don't care that I'm going to get smoked.
Right.
I'm here for the lesson and the journey and the learnings along the way, and I'm here to get better. Ultimately,
Yeah.
I want to see where I can go, like how far I can take this thing.
It it's amazing how much I'm doing this right now. I'm doing it to myself. So I'm thinking about like what does 2025 look like? What's my planning? What do I do with the podcast? How do I have more of an impact? And I jump to what if it's not successful from the perspective of other people's eyes or the measurements I put on it? How many people, whatever those exterior results are. And I actually in the last couple of days started to think about, you know what, if I make somewhat of a shift in from an external outcome perspective, fall flat on my face, I'm going to figure things out through the process that will make me better. And I'll like if I don't do it, I'll never regret not trying, right? Like if I don't go try what I think is the right thing to do, I just will never know if I won't have tested myself maybe, or I won't have, yeah. So I need to shift my mindset from if I do this, will I get the external and just worldly view of my outcome versus if I do this, am I betting on myself? Am I taking the risk on you on what I think I need to be doing, what I'm called to do, if you will, I need to go find that out, right? So it's just, I think it's real. And I think for our listeners, what is the situation you're in where you're saying, what will people think? What will I
Yes.
do about money? What am I going to lose? What is my time risk? Like those things are real, but the risk of not taking the risk, I think, is greater than all those. So just shifting to what you're doing versus the outcome you get. I love that. It clearly has struck a chord with me here. So thank you.
100%. Yeah. And I would say, for me, I had to, and I still push myself to ask, where am I playing small? Where am I holding back? Where am I playing so that I'm assured of the outcome versus where can I just go with reckless abandon and just see what I can do and just see how far. And if you remove the top of the envelope and say, there is no real limit that I'm going to put on myself, I'm going to find my limit myself and not put a box on it to begin with. That is to me for me where I would find true growth, right?
Yeah.
I have a great example of this that played out was, yeah, I love endurance sports, right? I came to endurance sports later in my more as an adult, like in my 30s. I ran my first marathon in 2000 in Chicago, and I really hated running up to that point, but I took it on as a dare and sort of like, hey, we're going to run a marathon. I was like, I don't really want to, but I did. And then I got bit by the running bug, and so really came to love running. And I had friends, I'd ran a few marathons, or a couple, 3 marathons. And I had friends that started in joining the running groups I was in saying, hey, I want to qualify for Boston. And I'm thinking, there's no way you're going to qualify for the Boston Marathon. I know how hard that is and how fast you got to run, and you're just getting going and it ain't going to happen. And then lo and behold, they would qualify within 1 or 2 attempts. They would qualify for Boston. And I was like, how is that possible? Like that does
Yeah.
not seem possible. And so I started to think maybe I could qualify for Boston, but I never verbalized it. And I would really, what I coined or started to call stealth train. So I didn't even tell people. I would just like people that knew me, knew I was a runner, knew that I trained, knew that I would even share like, yeah, I'm going to run this marathon. But I never said that I had any sort of time goal because I didn't want to fail. I didn't want to have people go, oh, you didn't make it, right? Oh, that's sad, And I didn't want to hear that, and I didn't want to feel that. So I just would keep it to myself. And what it resulted in, I would even do like just sort of not even have a hard set plan on how I was going to qualify. I would just grab some intermediate training program out of Runner's World magazine, follow that, and I would get similar results each race. I wasn't slow, but I wasn't anywhere near qualifying, right? And I did that for 9 marathons. I ran 9 marathons, and I just kind of burnt out of it. I was like, I'm just kind of running the same times over and over. I'm still 12, 15 minutes from qualifying, not even in the ballpark. And I just stopped, and I didn't run a marathon for a few years. And I had a friend who said that she wanted to qualify for the Boston Marathon, and would I help train her? And she was going to run far slower than what I knew I could run. I had run many marathons. And so I'm like, sure, I'll train with you. I'll help you get to that time. And I started to really kind of put my mind to like, man, she's telling everybody she's going to qualify.
Yeah.
She's putting it out there. She's putting herself at risk. And then lo and behold, we trained up for her race, and she just came apart at the seams, like didn't qualify and didn't even come close. Like had a bad day, right? Had a lot of stomach issues. And I observed all this, and I'm thinking, but the world didn't end, and people were still like, hey, great job. You really did great trying. And everyone was really, and I'm like, why wouldn't I put it out there and just see what I can do? And so I set my mind there and said, I'm going to qualify. And I started telling people I'm going to qualify. And what it really required was for me to become a different runner. Like I had to look and go, okay, I'm a pretty lean guy, but I was about 170 pounds. And my friends that were qualifying were like between 145 and 150, 55 pound guys. I was giving up 20 pounds to them in weight. And I'm thinking that's a lot to carry around for 26 miles, right? So
Yeah.
maybe I need to pay attention to my nutrition. So I adjusted, I didn't really fix, but I adjusted my nutrition plan. And I lost, by the time I got to race day, when I was attempting to qualify, I was running at about 153 pounds, right? So I lost almost 20 pounds of weight, about 17 pounds of weight. And I hired an online coach who made a specific plan for me to use to qualify for Boston. I got super intentional about every workout. And I laced up and lined up in June of 2018 at the Grandma's Marathon in Duluth, Minnesota, and I ripped off a Boston qualifying time. I beat my standard time, the
I,
qualifying standard.
I don't even want to
Uh,
ask the time because I just ran my first half and I'm like terrified of the like I'm just chuckling through this whole story because I just went through it for my first one, which I love. I absolutely love the whole event though. But you crushed it, it sounds
yeah,
like.
crushed it, man. I ripped it out and qualified. And then what was funny, so this is a great part of the story too, is Boston has the way Boston works now. So many athletes qualify. They have a rolling time based on the number of athletes each year. You don't really know how much you need to beat your qualifying standard by based on your age and gender, that you'll be invited to actually come and run in Boston. Right. So there's no guarantee if you beat your time that you'll be invited to come run.
Yeah.
And I beat my time by 3 minutes and 25 seconds, which in the history of the race, you had never needed to beat your time standard by that much and not get invited, right? If you beat it by that much in the history of the race, you were going to get to run Boston, except the year that I
Oh
qualified.
no.
I needed to run in 4:56 better than my qualifying time. And so I didn't get invited to run. I didn't get the little card that said, congratulations, you're invited to come run Boston. So I was qualifying for the 2019 race and I didn't get to go to the race. I qualified, but I didn't get invited.
Yeah.
And it did not bother me. I'm like, no problem. I will train and I will run faster. And so I took about a week off and I started training again. And 6 months later in Fort Worth, Texas, 2019, February 2019, I qualified and took another 3 minutes out of my time and got invited to run Boston in April of 2020. And they sent me the card. Yep, you qualified and you're invited to come run. So come run Boston April 2020. If you pay attention to what's going on in April 2020, there was no Boston Marathon
Oh
April
man.
2020. They canceled the race. At the same time, I have the card. I qualified twice. I'm like, I've mission accomplished. Like I did what I wanted to do
Yeah.
and in qualifying and getting the invitation. But that all said, the whole point of that was it wasn't it became about the journey. It became about being courageous enough to put it out there that I'm putting myself at risk, knowing that I had a lot of friends then watching, people paying attention. I had people watching from home on apps. And I knew if I burn up, everyone's going to know. But I was
Yeah.
okay with it. And
Yep.
I ran without fear from the first mile. Like I knew what I needed to run. And I'm like, I know I can run this pace for 1 mile and we're going to see if I can run it for 26 miles. But if I end up burnt up at 17 or 20 or 22 and sitting on the curb crying, that's it. It is what it is.
Right.
Like I'm
Right.
okay
You're
with
gonna
it.
go
Right.
get it. Yeah.
It became about the training and the fun and just digging into the whole adventure.
I mean, you tell me a marathon. I just did my first half marathon and I had I hadn't really aspired to do it for that long. And I'm like, I'm gonna try this, I'm gonna do it. And then I really didn't have a goal. I was like, I'll just run under 2 hours. And then I started doing
Nice.
my practice runs. I'm like, hey, I can run it. I can run it under like 155, I think. And then the week of the race, I trained, but not too hardcore, just kind of chat GPT, what should I do?
Yeah.
And the week of the race, I saw something posted on just some horrific things that are happening in our world, and I'm like, you know what? Like, I don't know if I saw that at the same time I'm thinking about like the race, and I'm like, you know what? The physical, it's not a physical challenge. It's never a physical challenge, honestly. Like a marathon, I don't think. You tell me, I did a half only. Is not a physical challenge. It's a mental challenge to be disciplined to on what you eat and how often you practice and run. And then the day of, I'm like, okay, someone's like, this is just a celebration event. And I was kind of like, no, this is the real mental test today. Like my body is what it is, where it is. It's a mental test. And I had this mindset or this picture in my head of horrible things happening in the world. And I'm like, don't be weak. Like, come
Mm.
on. And then it's the Columbus Half Marathon, which anyone that does it, it's just phenomenal because every mile is for a kid at the hospital. So it's really
Oh,
impactful. They give you high fives and stuff, just tons of energy. And it was so neat. And so I changed my goal from 2 to 155 to 150 throughout the week. I'm like 150, and I'm like in my head, there's no way I can do it, right? And it's not about the time, it's not that impressive, but in my head, I'm like, based on all my training runs, there's no way I can do it. And I beat it by like four. I beat the time I didn't think I could do by like 4 minutes, and it was just such a cool
Nice.
feel. But in my mindset, I'm like, the longer I go, the stronger I get. Like the further I run, the stronger I get. Like I'm going to win. It's mental, mental, mental. So,
Yeah.
and I guess like we went on this whole tangent about endurance sports, but I think endurance sports, if you're thinking about any of that, like there's
Oh,
power in building your mental muscle, your grit, your mindset. And it's not about the result, but if you know you put what you can into it, and then you keep stressing or challenging yourself, and
mm,
not you hit a time, but you did it and you gave it what you got. Like that's what was so cool for me about the whole process.
yes, agreed. And congrats on that finish. I would agree with you. You said it. You said it one way, and then I was going to disagree. But I will agree with what you said, which is the marathon is not physical; it's mental. And I would say it is physical. If you show up to the line untrained, like I'm just going to gut it out, like I can
Yeah,
gut out a 5K,
for
it ain't
sure.
going to end well, right? It's going to be
Right.
a bad day. But what you said is it's mental that you will put in the training time, that you'll be disciplined enough to do the work, and that is true, right? That
Right.
is what, and then when if you've done the work, when you show up on race day, it is predominantly a mental battle. There can be physical challenges with stomach, but things like that. But a lot of that is mental as well. Like if you're mentally really stressed out and you're dumping cortisol into your body because you're so anxious and have so much anxiety, you're going to create GI
Right.
tract issues and some other things will manifest. But it is predominantly a mental challenge if you've done the
Yeah.
work, right?
Yeah.
For
Yeah. And
100%.
I think putting yourself in mental challenges that you can overcome, and if they're quote physical challenges like endurance, but those things carry over, in my opinion, to business when you have different or
100%.
life. Like if you run into challenges, like okay, I have the mental toughness, the grit to get through these challenges. So, um,
100%.
we're a half hour in, and I want to get to question two here. But no, I love this conversation. This is absolutely fantastic. It's exactly what I want to talk about. Um, but where where did your mindset come from?
for for what? For the marathon, for where I'm at now?
Yeah, just general. So not for the merit, just in general, the mindset that you have, the approach to life that you have. Where did that come from? How has that been formed?
Yeah, I would say again, my more recent, like this in the past, say 5 years, where I'm going now in not playing small and shifting away from the playing small mentality. I would capture it in if you're familiar with the memento mori, right? So memento mori is basically is Latin for contemplate your death, and it just means remember you will die. Like, and it's a practice. It's a there's been some stoicism around it, but honestly, it's actually has religious backbone to it. But the whole idea there is it's not to be depressing or sad. It's actually to recognize, remember, you're going to die. So live life fully while you're here. Live it with abandon. Live it like you, because you don't know, right? It's biblical that we don't know the hour and the day that we're going to die. We think, oh, we're just going to live to be, old man. I'll die quietly in my bed one day when I'm 130. It's like, no, you could die tomorrow. So live your life every day as if you don't know when you're going to die, which you don't. So live it well, live it full, and live it with abandon. Like get after it. And so that has become my philosophy for life, which is memento mori. Like I'm going to die. Like bro, get after it. What are you waiting for? There is no. This is not a dress rehearsal. We don't know. And in fact, my wife and I we had one of these crazy experiences that you have that people talk about. So on December 1st of this year, we were going from a dinner date with another couple to a concert that was 3 miles from the restaurant that we were having dinner, 3 miles away. And we never made it, right? So we got a mile and a half down the road, sitting at a red light, and got rear-ended by a drunk driver who was hit us so hard he knocked the SUV we were in upside down onto its roof, and I woke up in the hospital with no memory of what had happened. Right, so I had been concussed. Now everybody walked away fine, including the idiot that hit us, by the grace of God. But the reality is, we weren't doing anything wrong. We weren't. I didn't fall asleep with. We were sitting at a red light 3 miles from our destination. Thank God I was buckled in, which I was in the back seat. We were riding with this other couple, and I almost never wear a seatbelt in the back seat, right? Bad habit. But I was buckled in that day, and so was my wife. And so we woke up, or she woke up. She actually never lost consciousness. I was the only one. I never was unconscious. I just have no memory of it. So my head got whacked. But we were all dangling like bats from our seatbelts, unbuckled, got out. But the point there is that could have been it. I never saw it coming. Woke up in the hospital, like, what am I doing here? Or came to, I start to have memory when I was in the hospital. And it could have all ended right there, right? So we don't know the hour and the day when it's going to end. And it doesn't necessarily have to be because of some bad decision or you had some sickness that you could see coming, like the end was coming. No, it can go like that. So live every moment fully. And if we're afraid, like, what if I'm afraid to leave my job? What am I afraid of?
Right.
Am I afraid? I'm picturing the worst, like, oh, we're gonna be homeless under a bridge. Really? Is that where this ends? I don't think so. I think that I will find a way to make enough money to pay bills and do the thing. And if I have to get another job again, I'll get another job again. It's not so get out there, right? See what happens. Train for the Boston Marathon. Say it boldly that you're going to do that and go do that. And then live life like the gift that it is, the miracle that you're here that it is.
Yeah.
And what are you holding back for? Like, I say that to myself, like, why are we holding back? Get after it. That has not been my philosophy my whole life, right? Again, my whole life I was playing fairly safe and fairly like, I'm going to stay in my comfort zone, and it's really comfortable in the comfort zone, right? Really, really comfortable there. And but I've more recently now embraced this idea that, man, there's so much more to it than just playing safe.
Yeah, and playing just the topic of playing safe, playing big. I think, what's the worst thing that can happen? And the other thing I want to talk about is we talked about like from a there's a health component like marathons, but also you can apply this to every area of life. Like you can, like, what is playing big? Like, I guess, how would you apply this to your family? For example, what's playing big? How should we think about that playing big with our family and our relationships?
Man, that's a great question. I would say if I was thinking about my kids, it would be to encourage them to take chances, right? To do things that are a little scary to them that they think I can't do that, right? I think that's playing big. I think, I'm a big, being a dad I took on as one of the most proud things that I could do. One of the most important thing, along with my relationship with my wife, as being kind of foremost, and my relationship with God being above that. Um, that I could do, right? So invest in your family, like do the bold things with your family. There's been sort of I think an awareness, at least maybe in the stuff that I follow or pay attention to, that stacking up physical wealth or material wealth and stuff and money and things and cars and homes, it's all empty because it's all going away. So seek to spend time and adventure with your family and your children, and have experiences and memories. And I would say I agree with that. I love spending time with my family and doing adventurous things and cool things and fun things that we love doing together. But at the same time, that stuff's going away too, right? All those things are going away too. My mother, God rest her soul, she died in 2018 of Alzheimer's, and she had Alzheimer's for like 12 years, diagnosed in 2006. So had a very long and slow decline through Alzheimer's. Had no memory at the end of who didn't know me for the last 5 years of her life, hadn't said my name as her youngest son. And so, the memories are going away too, right? So we have this limited amount of time. And so for me, I go back to like, man, what really is it? And I go from a biblical perspective, my favorite scripture is, Jesus saying, when the apostles ask him, what are the two most important commandments to follow, he says, love your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself, right? Those are the two things that I think when you peel it all back, that's what I'm called to do. I'm called to love my God and love my neighbor. And loving my neighbor means the hard stuff, right? It's not just when my neighbor's being a pal. It's when my neighbor's being a knucklehead and playing loud music or smoking cigarettes in his backyard, and I
Yep.
can smell it when I'm in my backyard. I'm still called to love him, right? If he parks his car right at the end of my driveway, I'm still called to love that guy or that lady. And so there's some challenge in that. And that's what we're called to do, right? Do those hard things that aren't always easy. The other scripture that I love is, and I don't have the verse, but you'll know it. It's basically, it's about husbands and wives, right? So it says, wives submit to your husbands, and husbands love your wives as Christ loved the church. Well, Christ died for the church, right? He died for the church. And who's the church, right? We're the church.
Right.
We are.
Yep.
And we didn't deserve, like, he shouldn't have died for us, right? We didn't earn that. He gave that to us willingly, even though we were a mess and we were continuing to stray from him and continuing to do all this bad stuff and continuing to deny him. And we hung him on a cross, and he still, to his last breath, said, "Forgive them. They don't know what they do." So we're called to love our wives, even when they're hard to love, right? Like Christ loved the church. He loved us to his dying breath. And so we're called to that. So I feel like that's what I'm here to do. And that's the message I'm trying to bring to my family and my friends. It's like, man, it's really short. Like, our time here is really short. And I think if we're anxious or we're wondering like what's going on, I think the more, when I'm having my best days, is when I'm recognizing the beauty of God, and I'm spending time in prayer with God, and I'm worshiping my Lord as I'm called to, and I'm giving to my neighbor, and I'm helping my neighbor. And that's where I love coaching, because I see that connectedness to, man, I can help people in their career. I can help them feel better. I work to incorporate, even on the straight business side coaching, this idea that, man, what's your vision for life? What are you trying to do while you're here? And, I'm sensitive to, not everyone is has the same faith journey or the same. So I don't, impose that, but it's, again, more from if you've only got a certain amount of time here, what are you trying to get accomplished while you're here? And if you're struggling with feeling empty in success, why is that? What do you think maybe is your greater purpose? And
Yep.
help people sort through that.
A lot of thoughts there. So first of all, I think just the first of all, the first two commandments, I think it was in the readings on Sunday. At church on Sunday, they talked about it this past week. And by the way, my takeaway was love God, love others as yourself, which also
Mm,
means love yourself. Like, give
yes.
yourself grace. Be like, don't be so tough on yourself all the time too. So that was another takeaway there. So I
Yep.
appreciate that. And serving others is really fulfilling. Like, if you can find a way to
Mm,
serve others and help others, whether that's your kids, neighbors, and the other thing, like, so a way to do that, love, be present, just be present, be where your feet are, is
yes.
can be super powerful. And then the last thought is, playing big can seem so big. And funny how I said that, right? Playing big is like this big, overwhelming task. But playing big can just be doing consistent small things, like being present with your kids. Like, that's like
Mm,
forgetting about work when you get home and being home and being where your feet are. That is playing big, like just focusing on that. So it doesn't need to be this big, massive external goal that, we think about when we think playing big. It can be the small, consistent steps that we take too.
100%. I love that. Totally agree. It doesn't have to be a trip to Disney World. And I, especially, for the dads and that, and the moms that are listening. I mean, yeah, time with your kids. And I was guilty of this too. It was like, I took on this armor of like, I'm a provider. Like, my wife is a stay-at-home mom, so I have to provide. And so if that means I have to miss some games or be away and do the thing because I'm a provider, I got caught up in that, right? And
Hmm.
and the reality is, you ask your kids, and you can talk to so many people on their deathbed or teeth or whatever, and it's like, we just wanted more time together, right? We just
Yeah.
wanted more time together. We don't care about all the stuff. And so pushing to excess of like, well, I just need to stack up some more wealth to make us feel comfortable, or so we can take a trip. Man, the kids don't care, right? They want
Yeah.
you. And so be present. Obviously, you have to perform at some level, but I think we it's easy to go in excess of that, right?
Yeah.
And then your family's missing out.
Yeah. And there's also there's being at home, and there's being present at home. There's
Yes,
quantity time and there's quality time too when we're thinking about that. So
100%.
um if you just step back and reflect, I mean, you're doing amazing things. You're just coaching, consulting, helping shift people's mindset. Bringing faith into the discussion. I think it sounds like more and more with your clients and customers. I'm sure. How does what you do make you feel?
Man, I feel great. I feel great when I'm with people, when I'm with my clients, and I'm having conversations with them, or giving a talk. I absolutely know I'm in alignment with God, because I just feel so good doing it. Now, I would be cautionary there. I think there can be times when it's easy to be deceived, right? And so that, oh, this is what you should do because you're having material wealth, or you're having success, or, and it's easy to get caught up in our own ego. So we have to be cautious there about just the feeling. But I know that when I'm working with clients and I see their reaction, like, man, this has made such an impact on me, or on my career, on my mindset, or my thinking, it is so rewarding. And you said something, Phil, too, which is when you serve others, it is rewarding. And I would say 100% agree. If you're ever feeling down, depressed, anxious, and look for a way to serve somebody, you will feel better. I've had that experience where it's like, man, any day giving my time or energy to someone else immediately takes me out of whatever funk I might be in, or whatever sort of self-focused whatever that is pulling me down. It goes away when you serve others. So I think it's so important. But I feel great when I'm doing my client work in front of clients, doing that stuff, when I'm with my family. My wife and I are, again, we've been married a long time, and yet we still love hanging out together. And it's from intention. Like, we've invested time in our marriage, right? And being together. And by all means, 30 years, it's not just all honeymoon, right? So you've got those seasons that are harder. And I would say that the times that were harder, it was when I was neglecting my marriage and not spending the time and the energy, like you said, being present when I'm present. I love that idea of, if I'm here, but I'm on my phone, or I'm doing email or work, or I'm not giving attention, that's what causes disconnect, right?
Yeah.
And you have to stay connected to your spouse. And so, yeah, I love all of it.
Yeah. And by the way, the stuff I say most of the time is also the stuff I'm working on, right? It's
That's the
like,
stuff we say to ourselves, right?
yeah,
That's just for
exactly. It's like,
sure.
hey, okay, get off your phone, be present. Or, hey, what did you say? Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Like, I
Right.
wasn't even in the room. Like,
Right.
and I mean, that's happened to me once ever only, I promise. No, it
Yeah, just
happens
once.
way
That's
too
it.
often. So
Yeah.
don't, again, get back to don't take your, don't be so, like, try to do that. Try to be present. It's not an easy thing to do, but just put the effort and then try to do it, I'm trying. I'm, you know, unsuccessful more often than not, but I'm still putting the effort in to try. So I think that's the takeaway
100%.
there. What is your preferred method of education? How do you build your mindset over time? Um,
Educating myself.
yeah.
I love to read. I've always been a reader. My mom gave me that, from a very young age. So I've always loved to read. I love reading biographies of people that have been successful. A lot of sports biographies, some religious books I love to read. Apologetics, studying the faith. I love to read that. I love to read about military veterans and their experiences, because I didn't serve in the military, but I have a lot of friends that served, and I'm inspired by the sacrifices that they've put out, that the risk that they've taken, the challenge that they put themselves in the unknown, right? So stepping into unknowns is a hard thing, right? And then a lot of those guys and gals, they did that. They signed a check not knowing where they were going to be taken, what they were going to be asked to do, but they pretty much could, be pretty well assured it would be somewhat risky and dangerous, and yet they still did it. And so I love reading books from veterans that talk about those things.
Any one specific book that just has really been impactful to you?
Yeah, the one, so I'm trying to, my 50 some odd, 56-year-old brain sometimes cramps. Adam Brown wrote a book. He was a Navy SEAL. And I'm drawing a blank on the title of the book. Probably could Google it real quick. But Adam Brown is definitely the individual. It's a short. I have to find it now because I'm going to go bonkers if I don't.
I'll race you to the finish.
Yeah, see if you can get it.
The Undaunted Courage and Unlimited Sacrifice of Navy SEAL Team 6.
Fearless.
Fearless.
No.
Fearless.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's it. Fearless.
Yeah.
That's it. Fearless. Great book. Great story. Super inspiring. He's deceased, right? So he was killed in action. But what a guy, and the things he did before his passing were incredible. And so that's a really, really good book. I love that book. A couple other books that I love. The Alchemist is a classic. Tells the hero's journey, story of the hero's journey. Are you familiar with that one?
I am.
Phil,
Yeah.
yeah, love it. It's one of those books you can read once a year. Just keep reading it. It's great. It talks about Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, which for those that don't know, I mean, that's how all great story is told, is through the eyes of the hero and the hero's journey. Luke Skywalker, the Star Wars story is that Luke Skywalker is the hero. So that it's a kind of a circular pathway where the hero initially resists the call to adventure. He resists it, like, nope, I'm not worthy. I'm not up for that challenge. I don't want to do it. Eventually gives into it and goes on this adventure and drops into the unknown, right? And as he's in the unknown and bumping around in the woods, he fights some battles, wins some battles, takes some nicks along the way, and gets a bit lost, finds a mentor, like an Obi-Wan Kenobi type or a Yoda that's going to help them, a guide that will help them figure out, like, what is your purpose? Why are you here? What is the magic thing you need to bring back to the world that will make the world better? Yeah. And then the hero returns and brings this magical elixir to the world, and the world is made better. That is The Alchemist book, written by Paulo Coelho. And I love that story. It's really, it captures all of our story, right? We are a hero called to adventure, called to go on a great adventure, and yet we often resist. Will we ever give into that call and see what's in the darkness that we need to go find and bring back to the world? So I love that book.
A lot of just what comes to mind, like a lot of us think about like travel and adventure and the fun of that. Like, those are 1 week adventures or a couple day adventures. Like, how do we make life an adventure? I think I had never thought about that in that context before. So I really like that. We got to wrap up here. How can our listeners find out more about you, Eric?
Yeah, you can visit my website. It's in the process of being updated, but ericsardina.com. So just my name, ERICSARDINA.com is my website. My Instagram is pretty lame. It's kind of what you would maybe expect from a 56-year-old guy, right? But I do put things on Instagram, which then get pushed over to Facebook, and I occasionally put things on LinkedIn. My Instagram is Eric_Sardina26.2, which is an homage to the marathon, right? So Eric_Sardina.
Oh, I love it.
26.2. Those are the best ways to kind of see what I'm doing out there. Again, I'm pretty bad at that stuff, but
I don't believe that for a second. Eric, we've come a long way from talking about our baldness and how we cut our hair to marathons, mindset, playing small, playing big, faith, a lot of different topics. I really appreciate the discussion. Let me know when you rip all the hair off. I'll let you know too. But honestly, this has been so insightful for me. I really appreciate it, Eric. Thanks for coming on the show.
Man, thank you, Phil. I so appreciate you, brother. And thanks for having me on and listening. And it's been a great conversation.
Awesome. I appreciate it. For the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast, signing off. Thank you for listening to the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. We hope you found today's episode helpful. If you know current or aspiring investors or entrepreneurs or anyone that would benefit from today's episode, we appreciate you sharing it with them, or better yet, providing us a 5-star review. To learn more about Moeller Real Estate, visit our website at www.moellerre.com. You can also sign up for our newsletter or local events via our website. In closing, I encourage you to be purposeful in all areas of life, educate yourself, network with others that have been successful, take action, and lead. Thank you.